The words came through the phone like shards of glass, each one cutting deeper than the last. You're the reason I can't be happy, Mom. Every time I hear your voice, I'm reminded of everything that's wrong in my life. I stood in my kitchen, the phone pressed against my ear, my other hand gripping the counter so hard my knuckles went white. Outside my window, the morning sun illuminated my garden, the roses I'd planted last spring blooming in shades of pink and coral. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful, while my world cracked apart. Madison, sweetheart, I don't understand, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. What did I do? What did you do? Her laugh was bitter, sharp enough to draw blood. You existed, Mom. You hovered. You controlled everything. You never let me breathe or make my own choices. I'm 32 years old, and I still hear your voice in my head criticizing everything I do. I never meant to. I don't care what you meant, Madison interrupted. I care about what you did, and what you did was suffocate me. So I'm asking you, no, I'm telling you to stop calling, stop texting, just stop. The line went dead. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone that sounded like the flat line of a heart monitor. Eventually, I set it down on the counter with trembling hands and sank into one of my kitchen chairs. This couldn't be happening. Not with Madison, not with my daughter, my only child, the person I'd devoted my entire life to raising and supporting and loving with every fiber of my being. I thought back to 3 days ago, the last time we'd spoken before this conversation. I'd called her to ask about Thanksgiving, whether she and her husband Trevor would be coming to my house, like they had for the past 5 years. It had been a normal conversation, or so I'd thought. She'd seemed distracted but not angry. She'd said she'd check with Trevor and get back to me. I'd called yesterday to follow up, and she hadn't answered. I'd left a voicemail asking if everything was okay, telling her I'd found a recipe for that cranberry sauce she loved and wanted to make sure I had enough time to prepare it properly. And now this. I looked around my kitchen, at the copper pots hanging from the rack I'd installed myself, at the herb garden growing in small pots on the windowsill, at the cookbook collection I'd been building since Madison was born. Everything in this house was designed around being a mother, around creating a warm and welcoming home for my daughter. The refrigerator was covered with photos held up by magnets I'd collected from every vacation Madison and I had taken together. There she was at age 6, gap-toothed and grinning at Disney World. Age 12, sullen but beautiful at the Grand Canyon. Age 16, rolling her eyes but smiling at our trip to New York City. Age 25, radiant on her wedding day with Trevor by her side. I'd been there for all of it. Every scraped knee, every broken heart, every triumph and disappointment. When her father, my ex-husband Richard, had left us when she was 8 years old, I'd worked 2 jobs to keep her in the same house, the same school, the same life she'd known. I'd sacrificed promotions because they would have required travel and taken me away from her. I'd turned down dates because I wanted to focus on being the best mother I could be, and now she was telling me I was the reason she couldn't be happy. I got up from the table and walked through my house, seeing it with new eyes. The living room with its comfortable furniture, all chosen with Madison's visits in mind. The guest bedroom I kept ready for her, decorated in the soft blues and greens she'd always loved. The closet stocked with extra toiletries and a robe in her size. The garage where I still kept her bicycle from high school. The boxes of her childhood artwork and school papers. The prom dress she'd worn when she was 17. My entire life was a shrine to motherhood, to her. I thought about the money. Over the years, I'd given Madison so much. When she'd wanted to study art in college instead of something more practical, I'd supported her decision and paid her tuition at an expensive private school. $60,000 over 4 years. Money I'd saved carefully and spent gladly because I wanted her to pursue her dreams. When she'd graduated and struggled to find work as a painter, I'd supplemented her income. $500 here, $1,000 there, whatever she needed to make rent and buy supplies. For 3 years, I'd essentially subsidized her artistic career. When she'd married Trevor, I'd paid for half the wedding, $25,000 for a beautiful ceremony and reception, because I wanted her day to be perfect. Trevor's parents had contributed the other half, but they'd made it clear they thought the whole thing was too expensive, too elaborate. I'd never complained, Never made Madison feel guilty about the cost. When they'd bought their first house 2 years ago, I'd given them $10,000 for the down payment. Consider it an early inheritance, I'd told Madison, hugging her tight. I want you to have a beautiful home. Just last month, when Madison had mentioned that Trevor's car had finally given out, I transferred $3,000 into her account. Get something reliable, I'd said. I don't want you two worrying about transportation. I'd never asked for any of it back. I'd never even mentioned it after the fact. It was just what mothers did, wasn't it? They helped their children, supported them, made their lives easier whenever possible. I walked to my home office and opened the filing cabinet where I kept financial records. I pulled out the folder labeled Madison and spread the papers across my desk. Bank transfers, receipts, canceled checks. I started adding them up, and the number made my breath catch. Over the past 14 years since she'd graduated high school, I'd given Madison $137,000. I sat back in my chair, staring at the number I'd written on a notepad. That didn't include the smaller things, the groceries I bought when I visited, the clothes I picked up when I saw something I thought she'd like, the restaurant meals I always insisted on paying for. If I added all of that, the number would easily be over $150,000. I'd been so proud of being able to help her. I'd worked hard my entire life, starting as an administrative assistant at a law firm right after Richard left, and working my way up to office manager. I made a decent salary, lived modestly, and saved carefully. Being able to give Madison money had felt like proof that I'd succeeded, that I'd made something of myself despite the challenges. But she thought I was controlling her. I tried to remember conversations where I might have overstepped, moments where my help might have felt like interference. There was the time I'd suggested she might want to take some business classes to help market her art better. She'd seemed annoyed, but I'd thought I was being helpful. Or when I'd offered to introduce her to a friend's daughter who worked at an art gallery, Madison had said she'd handle her own networking, her tone sharp. Last year, when she'd been sick with pneumonia, I'd driven to her house every day for 2 weeks to bring soup, to clean, to make sure she was taking her medication properly. Trevor had been traveling for work, and I hadn't wanted her to be alone. She'd thanked me, but looking back now, had there been something strained in her voice? 3 months ago, I'd noticed that their lawn was looking overgrown and had hired a landscaping service to come maintain it for the season. When Madison found out, she'd seemed upset, saying they could take care of their own yard. I'd apologized and explained I just wanted to help since they were both so busy with work. She'd let it go, but the tension had lingered. Was that what she meant? That my helping was actually controlling? I thought about the weekly phone calls I made, every Sunday at 10 in the morning. We'd been doing it for years, ever since she'd moved into her first apartment after college. I'd started the tradition because I missed her, because I wanted to stay connected. Did she see it as an obligation? A burden? The text messages I sent throughout the week, articles I thought she'd find interesting, photos of my garden, questions about her life, were those unwelcome intrusions instead of the loving check-ins I'd intended? I felt something shift inside me, a kind of awakening that was both painful and clarifying. I'd built my entire identity around being Madison's mother. When Richard left, I'd channeled all my energy, all my love, all my hopes into her. She'd become my purpose, my reason for existing. And maybe in doing so, I'd forgotten that she was a separate person with her own life to live. But even as I acknowledged that, anger started to simmer beneath the grief. Because regardless of my mistakes, I'd loved her. I'd sacrificed for her. I'd given her everything I had, everything I was. And instead of talking to me about her feelings, instead of setting boundaries gently or asking for space kindly, she'd lashed out with words designed to wound. The phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. I grabbed it eagerly, hoping it was Madison calling back to apologize, to explain, to tell me she'd spoken in anger and didn't mean it. It was my sister Carolyn. "Hey, Barbara," she said, her voice warm. "Just calling to check in. How's my favorite sister?" "I'm your only sister," I said automatically, our standard response. "True, but you'd still be my favorite." She paused. "You okay? You sound off." I considered lying, but Caroline and I had always been close. "Madison called this morning. She told me I'm the reason she can't be happy and asked me to stop contacting her." Silence on the other end. Then, "She said what?" I repeated the conversation, my voice steadier now that I was sharing the burden. Caroline listened without interrupting, letting me get it all out. "That little Caroline started, then caught herself. I'm sorry. I know she's your daughter, but Barbara, that's incredibly hurtful. What brought this on? I don't know, I admitted. I've been sitting here trying to figure out what I did wrong, and I can't pinpoint anything specific. I helped her. I supported her. I gave her money when she needed it. You gave her more than money, Caroline said firmly. You gave her everything. Your time, your energy, your savings. You put your own life on hold to make sure she had every advantage. Maybe that was the problem, I said quietly. Maybe I gave too much. There's no such thing as loving your child too much, Caroline countered. But there is such a thing as raising an ungrateful brat who doesn't appreciate what she has. Caroline, I'm serious, Barbara. You worked 2 jobs when Richard left. You turned down that promotion to regional manager because it would have meant relocating. You didn't date for years because you wanted to focus on Madison, and this is how she repays you. I thought about all those things Caroline mentioned, choices I'd made without regret at the time. But sitting here now, I wondered what my life might have looked like if I'd made different decisions, if I'd taken that promotion and moved to Chicago like they'd wanted, if I'd accepted when Daniel from accounting had asked me out repeatedly over the course of 2 years, if I'd traveled more, pursued hobbies, built a life that wasn't entirely centered on my daughter. What are you going to do? Caroline asked. I don't know, I said honestly. She asked me to stop calling, so I guess I'll respect that. For how long? I don't know that either. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up, Caroline making me promise to call her if I needed anything. I sat in my office as the afternoon light shifted, casting long shadows across the floor. Over the next few days, I went through the motions of my normal routine. I went to work, made small talk with colleagues, came home to my empty house. But everything felt different now, like the world had tilted slightly on its axis and nothing quite fit the way it used to. Sunday morning arrived, and for the first time in over a decade, I didn't call Madison at 10. I sat on my couch with my coffee, watching the clock tick past the usual time, my phone silent in my lap. It felt wrong, unnatural, like forgetting to breathe. I wondered if she noticed, if she was relieved, or if maybe, just maybe, she was checking her phone, wondering why I hadn't called. By Wednesday, I still hadn't heard from her. No call, no text, no email. The silence was deafening. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office to avoid going home to my too quiet house. My boss noticed and commented on how productive I'd been lately. I smiled and accepted the compliment without explaining that I was just trying to outrun my thoughts. 2 weeks after Madison's call, I was scrolling through social media when I saw it. A photo posted by Trevor, Madison's husband. They were at a restaurant, a nice one by the looks of it, toasting with champagne. The caption read, "Celebrating my beautiful wife's gallery showing this weekend. So proud of her." Gallery showing. Madison was having a gallery showing, and she hadn't told me. I clicked through to Madison's profile, which I realized I hadn't checked in a while. There were multiple posts about the upcoming show, photos of her paintings being hung, excited captions about this being a dream come true. The show was in 3 days, at a gallery downtown. She hadn't mentioned it. Not in our last conversation before the blow-up, not ever. I felt the hurt like a physical blow to the chest. This was huge, the kind of career milestone we would have celebrated together. I would have helped her prepare, offered to host a pre-show dinner, insisted on buying one of her paintings to support her, and she deliberately kept it from me. Or maybe she hadn't. Maybe she'd been planning to tell me and then decided I wasn't worth sharing good news with. I looked at the comments on her posts. Friends and acquaintances congratulating her, saying they'd be there, expressing excitement. Trevor's parents had commented, "Can't wait to see your work on display." Trevor's parents, who I'd met exactly 3 times, who lived 2 states away and rarely visited. They were invited, but I wasn't. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. I was done feeling hurt, done questioning what I'd done wrong, done letting Madison's words define my worth. I'd given her everything, and she'd thrown it back in my face. Fine. She wanted space? I'd give her all the space in the world. I got dressed and drove to my bank. I requested a meeting with my financial advisor, a kind woman named Patricia, who'd been helping me manage my retirement accounts for years. "I need to make some changes," I told her once we were seated in her office. "What kind of changes?" Patricia asked, pulling up my accounts on her computer. "I want to move everything into accounts that only have my name on them. No beneficiaries listed as primary, Actually, I want to change my beneficiary designations entirely. Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly. May I ask why? You have your daughter listed as the primary beneficiary on everything currently. That's what I want to change, I said firmly. I want to split my estate between my sister Caroline and several charities I'd like to research. I also want to set up a trust that Madison can't access. Barbara, this is a significant change. Have you thought this through? I've thought about nothing else for 2 weeks, I said. My daughter made it very clear that I'm a negative presence in her life, so I'm removing myself in every way possible. That includes financially.
Patricia looked uncomfortable but professional. All right, let's go through your accounts and make these changes. But I'd recommend you also update your will and power of attorney documents. You should speak with an estate attorney.
Can you recommend one? She could, and did. I left the bank 3 hours later with my beneficiary designations changed and an appointment scheduled with an attorney for the following week. Next, I went home and started going through my house room by room. The guest bedroom that was essentially Madison's room, I stripped it, took down the photos, packed up the toiletries, removed the robe. I repainted it over the weekend in a warm sage green and started thinking about turning it into a proper guest room or maybe a hobby space for myself. I'd always wanted to try pottery, the boxes in the garage, Madison's artwork, her school papers, her old clothes and books. I packed them all into my car and drove them to a storage facility. I rented a small unit and stacked everything inside. If she wanted them someday, fine. But they wouldn't be cluttering my space, constant reminders of a relationship that apparently had been one-sided. The photos on my refrigerator came down. I kept one, Madison as a baby, before everything got complicated, and put it in a frame on my bookshelf. The rest went into an album that I placed in my closet. I was purging, cleansing, reclaiming my space and my life. At work on Monday, my colleague Jennifer asked if I wanted to join her book club. I'd always said no before, claiming I was too busy. This time I said yes. Jennifer's face lit up with surprise and delight. Really? That's wonderful. We meet every other Thursday at the coffee house on Main Street. This week we're discussing The Midnight Library. Have you read it? I hadn't, but I bought it that evening and started reading. It was about second chances and parallel lives and the choices we make. It felt painfully relevant. At Thursday's book club meeting, I met 6 women who were smart, funny, and welcoming. We discussed the book, drank wine, and laughed about everything from work, stress, to dating disasters. One woman, Susan, was recently divorced and talked about rediscovering herself after 25 years of marriage. It's terrifying, she admitted, but also kind of exciting. I'm learning what I like, what I want, who I am outside of being someone's wife. I understood that feeling, except I was discovering who I was outside of being someone's mother. The night of Madison's gallery showing, I stayed home. I thought about going, showing up to support her despite everything. But I realized that would be falling back into old patterns, putting her needs and feelings above my own, making myself small to fit into her life. Instead, I met Caroline for dinner at a restaurant I'd been wanting to try for months. We ordered expensive wine and appetizers and split a dessert. We talked about everything except Madison, and it felt freeing. 3 days after the gallery show, Madison called. I saw her name on my phone and felt my heart rate spike. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times before answering. Hello, Madison. Mom. Her voice was tight, controlled. I wanted to let you know that my gallery show went really well. We sold 4 paintings. That's wonderful. Congratulations. Silence. I think she'd expected me to say more, to gush and ask questions and beg for details. The old me would have. Anyway, she continued, uncertainty creeping into her tone. Trevor's parents bought one of the paintings. It was the landscape I did last summer of the mountains. That's nice of them. More silence. Mom, are you okay? The question almost made me laugh. I'm fine, Madison. Was there something else you needed? You sound different. Do I? I kept my voice neutral, pleasant. I've been respecting your wishes. You asked me to stop calling, so I have. I know, but... She paused. I didn't think you'd actually stop completely. And there it was. She'd expected me to ignore her request, to keep reaching out, to prove my love by refusing to give her the space she'd demanded. It was a test I hadn't realized I was taking, and I'd failed by actually listening to her. You told me I was the reason you couldn't be happy, I said quietly. You asked me to stop contacting you. I'm doing what you asked. I was upset when I said that, Madison said, her voice rising slightly. I didn't mean for you to just disappear from my life. Then what did you mean, Madison? Help me understand. Because from where I'm sitting, you were very clear about what you wanted. I don't know. I wanted you to give me some space, not to cut me off entirely. How much space? I asked. A day? A week? A month? You didn't specify, so I'm giving you as much as you need. This isn't fair, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice now. You're being passive-aggressive. I'm being respectful of your boundaries, I corrected. You're an adult, Madison. You said what you needed to say, and I'm responding accordingly. That's not passive-aggressive. It's called taking you at your word. I can't believe you're doing this, she said. I have a big moment in my career, and you're not even being supportive. The audacity of that statement took my breath away. You didn't tell me about the show, Madison. I found out through social media. You invited Trevor's parents, but not me. So don't accuse me of not being supportive when you deliberately excluded me. I didn't know if you'd want to come after our fight. You could have asked. You could have sent a text saying, I know things are weird between us, but I'd still like you to come to my show. You didn't. You made a choice, and now you're upset that I respected it. I heard her crying openly now. Part of me, the mother part that had comforted every tear for 32 years, wanted to take it all back, to apologize, to soothe her pain. But another part of me, the part that had been growing stronger over these past weeks, held firm. I need to go, I said gently. I'm glad your show was successful, I really am. Take care of yourself, Madison. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking and my heart was pounding, but I also felt something unexpected. Pride. I'd stood my ground. I hadn't crumbled or begged or accepted crumbs of her attention. That weekend, Caroline invited me to join her and her husband, Tom, for a day trip to wine country. We visited 3 wineries, tasted a dozen different wines, bought bottles of our favorites, and had a long lunch at a restaurant with vineyard views. I laughed more than I had in months. You seem different, Tom observed as we drove home. Good different. I feel different, I admitted. Lighter, maybe. Heartbreak will do that, Caroline said from the passenger seat. Once you get through the worst of it, once you stop carrying the weight of someone else's expectations and disappointments, you realize how much energy it was taking. She was right. I'd been exhausted for years without realizing it, constantly monitoring Madison's moods, trying to anticipate her needs, walking on eggshells around topics I sensed might upset her. Now, with that relationship in limbo, I had so much more mental and emotional space. I joined a yoga class, started going to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings, said yes when Daniel from accounting, who apparently had never stopped being interested despite my years of gentle rejections, asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. The coffee date turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a weekend trip to the coast. Daniel was kind, funny, and refreshingly straightforward. He'd been divorced for 5 years, had 2 grown sons he was close with, and had spent the time since his divorce traveling and pursuing hobbies he'd neglected during his marriage. I spent 23 years being a husband and a father, he told me over seafood at a restaurant overlooking the ocean. And those were good years. But when it ended, I realized I'd lost track of who I was outside those roles. So I'm figuring it out now. That's exactly what I'm doing, I said, feeling a connection deeper than I'd expected. We didn't rush into anything, but we saw each other regularly. It was nice having someone to share things with, someone who was interested in my thoughts and feelings, someone who didn't expect me to sacrifice everything for their happiness. 6 weeks after Madison's gallery show, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Patterson, this is Trevor, Madison's husband. Hello, Trevor. I kept my voice neutral. Is everything okay? I don't know, he said, sounding stressed. Barbara, I need to talk to you about something. Madison doesn't know I'm calling. All right. She's not doing well, he said carefully. Since you two stopped talking, she's been, I don't know how to describe it, anxious, I guess. She keeps checking her phone, waiting for you to call. She cries a lot. She's not sleeping well. I felt a pang of concern but pushed it aside. I'm sorry to hear that, Trevor, but she asked me to give her space. That's what I'm doing. I know, but I think she expected you to fight harder, to not actually listen to her. He paused. Look, I love my wife, but I'll be honest. She's used to you being available whenever she needs you. Financially, emotionally, all of it. And I think she took that for granted. I think so too, I said quietly. She won't admit it, but she misses you. And she's realizing that maybe she said some things she didn't mean. Maybe is a big word, Trevor. Either she meant them or she didn't. He sighed. She's stubborn. She got that from her father, I think. She won't reach out because she doesn't want to admit she was wrong. Then she'll have to sit with that discomfort, I said, more firmly than I'd intended. I'm not chasing her anymore, Trevor. I love my daughter, but I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep her warm. I understand, he said, though he sounded disappointed. I just thought you should know. I appreciate you calling. And Trevor, take care of her. She's lucky to have you. After we hung up, I sat with the information. Madison was struggling. Part of me wanted to fix it immediately, to call her and smooth everything over, but I knew that would just reset us back to the unhealthy dynamic we'd had before. Change was uncomfortable. Growth was painful. If Madison was going to learn to appreciate what she had, she needed to experience what it felt like to lose it. Another month passed. The holidays approached, and for the first time in 32 years, I wasn't planning my life around Madison. Caroline invited me and Daniel to spend Thanksgiving with her family. I said yes without hesitation. The morning of Thanksgiving, my phone rang. Madison. Hi, Mom. Hello, Madison. Are you doing anything for Thanksgiving? I'm going to Caroline's. She's having dinner for the whole family. Oh, she sounded small. I thought maybe you'd want to do our usual thing. You didn't ask, I said gently. And you haven't spoken to me in over a month except to call me passive-aggressive. I know. I'm sorry, She took a shaky breath. Trevor and I are spending the day alone. His parents are on a cruise, and I thought you might want company. That sounds lonely, I said, meaning it. But Madison, you made your choices. You told me I was the reason you couldn't be happy. You excluded me from your gallery show. You've spent months pushing me away and then being angry when I actually gave you space. I can't keep doing this dance with you. I made a mistake, she whispered. I was angry and stressed, and I took it out on you. But I didn't mean it. I didn't mean any of it. Which part didn't you mean? That I'm the reason you can't be happy? That I'm controlling? That you wanted me to stop calling? All of it. None of it, I don't know. She was crying now. I'm confused and overwhelmed, and I feel like I'm drowning. And you're the only person who's ever made me feel safe. And now you're not here. My heart ached for her, but I held firm. I'm not here because you pushed me away, Madison. You don't get to reject me and then be upset when I'm not available to comfort you through the consequences of that rejection. So what am I supposed to do? She asked desperately. Figure out what you actually want, I said. Figure out who you are and what kind of relationship you want with me, if any. And when you know the answer to that, when you're ready to have an honest conversation about boundaries and expectations and mutual respect, then we can talk. But I'm not going to keep begging for scraps of your attention or walking on eggshells hoping you won't lash out at me again. I don't know how to do this without you, she sobbed. Then you'll learn, I said, my own voice thick with emotion. Just like I've been learning how to do this without you. It's hard, but we're both capable of more than we think. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Madison. That's never been the question. The question is whether love is enough to build a healthy relationship on. And right now I don't think it is. Not the way things have been. I hung up and cried for the first time since this all started. Not because I was sad, though I was, but because I was grieving the relationship I'd thought we had, the daughter I thought I was raising, the future I'd imagined we'd share. Daniel found me on the couch 20 minutes later, tissues scattered around me, my eyes red and swollen. He didn't say anything, just sat beside me and held my hand while I cried. Thanksgiving at Caroline's was bittersweet. I was grateful for the warmth and laughter and the distraction, but part of my mind kept wandering to Madison, wondering what she and Trevor were doing, whether she was okay. Stop it, Caroline said, catching me staring into space. She made her bed. Let her lie in it for a while. She's my daughter, I protested weakly. And you're a person, Caroline countered. A person who deserves respect and consideration and kindness. She'll either figure that out or she won't, but you can't force the realization. December arrived with its usual chaos of holiday preparations. I decorated my house for the first time in years. Really decorated, not just putting up a tree for Madison's potential visit. I strung lights, hung garland, bought a gorgeous wreath for my front door. I was doing it for me, because I loved the way it made my home feel warm and festive. I went shopping with the book club ladies, attended Caroline's office holiday party with Daniel as my date, volunteered at a local food bank. I was building a life that felt full and meaningful, one that didn't revolve entirely around being Madison's mother. 2 weeks before the holiday season, I received a certified letter. My attorney had finished drafting my new will, and it was ready for signing. I made an appointment to review it one final time. "You're sure about this?" the attorney, a sharp woman named Margaret, asked as we went through the documents. "You're leaving the bulk of your estate to your sister and various charitable organizations, with only a small trust for your daughter that she can access after your passing." "I'm sure," I said. "The trust will be enough to provide some security, but it won't be the windfall she might have expected. And it can only be used for specific purposes, education, medical emergencies, that sort of thing. Not just general spending money." Margaret nodded. "And you're comfortable with these charities? The women's shelter, the arts education program, the scholarship fund?" "Very comfortable." I'd researched each one carefully, choosing organizations that supported causes I cared about. The scholarship fund was specifically for first-generation college students studying business, kids who might not have family support and needed financial help to build better lives. I signed the documents, and Margaret witnessed them along with her assistant. It was done. My estate was settled in a way that reflected my values and my new understanding of what family obligation meant. That evening, I posted on social media for the first time in months. Just a photo of my decorated living room with a caption, "Creating new traditions this year, wishing everyone a season of peace and joy." Within an hour, Madison had commented, "Your house looks beautiful, Mom." I liked the comment, but didn't respond. Small steps. The week before the holidays, Trevor called again. "Barbara, I'm sorry to bother you, but we have a situation." "What's wrong?" "Madison's car broke down, completely. The mechanic says it needs a new transmission and it's going to cost about $4,000 to fix." I waited, knowing what was coming. "We don't have that kind of money right now," Trevor continued. "We're still paying off credit cards from the wedding and the gallery show costs. I was wondering if you might be able to help us out. We'd pay you back, of course." There it was, the pattern we'd fallen into so many times before. Madison had a problem, and I was supposed to solve it with my checkbook. "No," I said simply. "No?" Trevor sounded shocked. "No, I won't be giving you money for the car. You're both adults with jobs. You'll need to figure this out on your own. Take out a loan, use a credit card, save up and use public transportation in the meantime. Those are all options." "But Barbara, you've helped us before." "I have," I interrupted. "I've helped Madison her entire life. I've given her over $150,000 since she graduated high school. And what did that teach her? That Mom will always bail her out. That she doesn't need to plan or budget or save because I'll be there to fix everything." "Well, not anymore." "She's going to be really upset," Trevor said. "Then she'll be upset. That's not my problem to solve, Trevor. I'm sorry about the car, truly. But this is a natural consequence of not maintaining an emergency fund. Consider it a learning experience." I hung up feeling both guilty and empowered. The guilt was familiar, the old voice telling me I was being selfish, that good mothers help their children no matter what. But the empowerment was newer, stronger, the knowledge that I was breaking a cycle that wasn't healthy for either of us. Madison called 30 minutes later, furious. "I can't believe you told Trevor no. We need that money, Mom." "You want that money," I corrected. "There's a difference between need and want. You need transportation. There are cheaper ways to solve that problem than a $4,000 transmission repair. So what am I supposed to do? We can't afford a new car. Buy a used car. Take public transportation. Carpool with Trevor. Use ride-sharing services. There are options, Madison. You just don't like them because they're not as convenient as having me write you a check." "This is ridiculous," she said. "You're punishing me because you're mad about what I said months ago. I'm not punishing you. I'm declining to solve a problem that you're capable of solving yourself. That's not punishment. That's life." "You used to care about me," she said, her voice breaking. "I still care about you," I said firmly. "But I'm realizing that the way I showed that care wasn't always healthy. I enabled you to avoid facing consequences and building resilience. I'm not doing that anymore." "I hate this," Madison said. "I hate what you've become." "What have I become?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Cold, distant, like you don't even love me anymore." "I love you very much, Madison. But I'm learning that love doesn't mean sacrificing my own well-being for yours. It doesn't mean saying yes to every request. It doesn't mean letting you treat me poorly without consequences. She hung up on me. I felt the tears coming but blinked them back. This was hard, possibly the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was necessary. The next day at work, I got an email from Madison. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." I opened it with trembling hands. "Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few months. Trevor suggested I talk to a therapist, so I started seeing someone a few weeks ago. We've been discussing my relationship with you, my expectations, my behavior, and I'm starting to see some things I didn't want to see before. I'm not ready to have a big conversation about all of this yet, but I wanted you to know that I'm working on it. I'm working on me, and I'm sorry for the things I said. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, or even at all, but I wanted you to know. Love, Madison." I read the email 3 times, feeling hope bloom in my chest, despite my best efforts to contain it. She was seeing a therapist. She was acknowledging her behavior. These were good signs, but I also knew that therapy took time. Real change took time. One email didn't undo months of hurt or years of unhealthy patterns. I wrote back, "Madison, I'm proud of you for seeing a therapist. That takes courage. I'm working on myself too, figuring out who I am outside of being your mom. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Love, Mom." Short, supportive, but boundaried. It felt right. The holidays passed quietly. I spent time with Caroline and her family, with Daniel and his sons, with my book club friends. I didn't hear from Madison on the holiday itself, and while it stung, I survived it. On New Year's Eve, Daniel and I went to a party hosted by one of his friends. At midnight, surrounded by laughing, celebrating strangers, he kissed me and said, "Here's to new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my champagne glass against his. January brought cold weather and a fresh start. I signed up for that pottery class I'd been thinking about and discovered I loved working with clay, loved the meditative quality of shaping something with my hands. My first bowl was lopsided and imperfect, but it was mine. In February, Madison sent another email. "Still in therapy, learning a lot, hope you're well." I responded, "Glad to hear it. I'm doing well. Started pottery classes. Small exchanges, careful and cordial, like we were learning a new language together." March brought my birthday, the first one in over 30 years that Madison didn't call first thing in the morning. Caroline took me out for lunch, and Daniel surprised me with tickets to a show I'd wanted to see. The day was lovely, but part of me still felt Madison's absence. That evening, a package arrived. Inside was a small painting, unsigned, with a card that read, "I painted this thinking of you. It's the garden you always talked about having. Maybe someday. Happy birthday. Love, M." The painting showed a riot of flowers, roses and peonies and delphiniums, surrounding a small bench where a figure sat reading. It was beautiful, detailed, clearly done with care. I hung it in my bedroom where I could see it every morning when I woke up. It felt like an olive branch, extended carefully. I texted her, "Thank you for the painting, it's beautiful. I hung it in my bedroom." She replied, "I'm glad you like it. I've been painting a lot in therapy. It helps." Spring arrived with its promise of renewal. My garden bloomed spectacularly. The roses I'd planted years ago finally mature enough to produce masses of flowers. I spent weekends working in the soil, planting new varieties, creating the garden from Madison's painting. In April, Madison called. "Hi, Mom. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" "I do," I said, settling onto my couch. "I've been in therapy for 6 months now," she began, "and I've learned a lot about myself, about patterns I inherited from Dad's leaving, about expectations I put on you that were unfair." I listened without interrupting. "My therapist asked me to make a list of all the things you've done for me over the years, not just the money, but everything. The time, the support, the sacrifices." Her voice cracked. "Mom, the list was so long, pages and pages, and I realized I never really acknowledged most of it. I just took it for granted." "Madison, please let me finish," she said. "I need to say this. You were right about everything. I did take you for granted. I did use you as an emotional punching bag. I did expect you to always be available while giving nothing back. And when you finally set boundaries, I lashed out because I couldn't handle the idea that you might have needs and feelings that were separate from mine." I felt tears running down my face, but stayed silent. I'm not asking you to go back to how things were, Madison continued. I know that wasn't healthy, but I'm hoping we can build something new, something better, where we're both honest about what we need and what we can give, where I respect your boundaries and you feel comfortable setting them, where I show up for you the way you've always shown up for me. I'd like that, I managed to say. I'd like that very much. Can we start slow? She asked. Maybe coffee sometime. Just talking, no expectations. Coffee sounds perfect. We met the following Saturday at a cafe halfway between our homes. Madison looked different, a little thinner, a little older, but also somehow more grounded. We ordered our drinks and sat at a table by the window. You look good, Mom, Madison said. Different. Happier, maybe? I am happier, I admitted. I've been building a life that's mine, not just waiting for you to need me. Tell me about it, she said. I want to know. So I told her about Daniel, about the book club, about pottery classes and wine country trips, and the garden I was creating. She listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at my stories. I'm dating someone too, she said eventually. Well, not dating, I'm married. But Trevor and I are in couples therapy now, working on our communication. That's wonderful, I said, meaning it. We were headed for some serious problems, Madison admitted. I was bringing all the patterns from our relationship, mine and yours, into my marriage, expecting him to read my mind, getting angry when he didn't anticipate my needs, refusing to ask for help directly. It was a mess. Relationships are hard, I said. They require constant work and communication. I'm learning that. She paused. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think you'll ever forgive me for what I said, for how I treated you? I thought about it carefully. I think I already have mostly. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or going back to old patterns. It means moving forward with wisdom and boundaries. I can live with that, Madison said. We talked for 2 hours, covering everything from her art to my work to family gossip Caroline had shared. It felt different than our old conversations, more balanced, more mutual, like we were two adults getting to know each other rather than a mother managing her daughter's emotions. As we were leaving, Madison hugged me tight. Thank you for not giving up on me, she whispered. Even when I gave up on us. You're my daughter, I said simply. I'll always love you, but I'm also a person, and I deserve respect and consideration. I'm glad you're learning that. Over the following months, we built a new relationship slowly and carefully. Coffee dates every few weeks, occasional texts sharing articles or photos. She invited me to her studio once to see her recent work, and I invited her to my pottery class to try throwing a pot. We didn't talk every day or even every week, but when we did talk, it meant something. She asked about my life, remembered details I'd shared, showed genuine interest, and I did the same for her, without the underlying anxiety that used to characterize our interactions. In June, Madison and Trevor invited me and Daniel to dinner at their house. It was casual, grilled chicken and salad, wine on their back patio. Trevor seemed more relaxed than I'd seen him before, and Madison was genuinely happy. After dinner, as we were clearing dishes, Madison pulled me aside. Mom, I wanted to talk to you about something. Trevor and I have been working really hard on our finances. We paid off all our credit cards, built up an emergency fund, and we're actually sticking to a budget now. That's excellent, I said, proud of her. We sold my old car, the one that broke down, to a junkyard for parts, and bought a used Honda with the money we'd saved. It's not fancy, but it runs great, and we own it outright. Madison, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you for handling that yourselves. We couldn't have done it if you'd bailed us out, she said quietly. It was hard, and there were times I resented you for not helping. But learning to solve our own problems, to delay gratification and work toward goals, that's been huge for us. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is step back and let their child struggle, I said, even when it hurts to watch. I get that now. She paused. I also wanted to tell you that I've started putting aside money each month to pay you back for some of what you've given me over the years. Madison, you don't have to. I want to, she interrupted. Not all of it. That would take forever. But I want to pay back at least the down payment money and the car money. It's important to me to do this, to show you that I value what you did and that I don't take it for granted anymore. I felt emotions welling up. Thank you. That means more than you know. That fall, Madison's career took off. A gallery in New York expressed interest in representing her, and she sold 3 paintings for significant amounts. She was building the artistic career she'd always dreamed of, but this time through her own talent and hard work rather than my financial support. For the holidays that year, I hosted dinner at my house for the first time. Madison and Trevor, Caroline and Tom, Daniel, and a few friends from book club. My dining room table was crowded and loud with laughter and conversation. As I looked around at the people gathered in my home, I felt a contentment I hadn't known was possible. This was what I'd been missing when my entire life revolved around Madison. Community, connection with multiple people, a sense of purpose that came from within rather than from managing someone else's life. Madison caught my eye from across the table and smiled, raising her wine glass in a small toast just for me. I raised mine back. After everyone left and I was cleaning up, Daniel stayed to help. We worked in comfortable silence, washing dishes and putting away leftovers. "You did good," he said, drying the last plate. "Tonight was perfect." "It was, wasn't it?" I agreed, feeling grateful and tired and happy. Later, lying in bed, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the pain of Madison's rejection, the hard work of rebuilding myself, the courage it took to maintain boundaries even when it hurt. All of it had been necessary to get to this place, a place where I had a life I loved, relationships built on mutual respect, and a sense of self that didn't depend on being needed. Madison and I would never have the relationship I'd once imagined. But what we were building now was healthier, more sustainable, built on honesty and respect rather than guilt and obligation. She told me I was the reason she couldn't be happy, and maybe at that moment she'd believed it. But the truth was, she'd needed to find her own path to happiness, just like I'd needed to find mine. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to be their excuse for not doing the work. I'd stopped calling when she asked me to, and in that space, we'd both grown into better versions of ourselves. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes it means holding firm to boundaries. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it means finding your way back to each other with wisdom and grace. Have you ever had to set firm boundaries with someone you love? How did you find the strength to prioritize your own well-being?